It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, April 20th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is trying really hard not to make a 420 joke. But there, I just did it. Sorry.
I mean, I heard Hall and Oates 5 times tonight. It's 5 times too many.
All right, let's get this show going.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, once again. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with my co-host Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. Keep up to date on all of our episodes and the Flyers news. You can also email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Of course, we are going to talk about last night's loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to get into some mailbag questions, lots of good stuff today. Locked On Flyers is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening right now. So subscribe and you'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Russ. We were a little nervous about last night's game when we talked about it yesterday, just because the Leafs have so much depth beyond Austin Matthews that him being out just really wasn't going to be an issue. And sure
No,
enough, that was the case. I think Nylander more than made up for it.
he did, and we talked about how he has success against the Flyers, and that's not going to change. The Probably the worst stat I've seen all year. I want to say all year, yeah, and it's really in a long time that when the Flyers are down by 2 goals, they're 0-37 and 1, something to that degree, which is incomprehensible.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but now that you've brought up that specific point, let's talk about pulling the goalie because
Hmm.
I think, the Flyers have been absolutely atrocious at it this season where they've been so bad at maintaining possession of the puck that they don't even have control well enough half the time that the goalie goes to the bench. And in this case, I think they sort of had control, but they were up against the boards and lost it easily because, again, the Leafs have more jump and are going to win those board battles anyway. And so it was like an easy empty netter. And so, my question is if you're down by two, I understand if you're down by one, there's an obligation to pull the goalie to at least make an attempt. But for this team at this time, down by two, like what does pulling the goalie do for you?
I mean, it's just it's like a Hail Mary, and you know that the odds of that are slim. So I get what you're saying. It's almost just like, I don't know, like another nail in the coffin. Like, you're just, the minute you do it, you're almost putting the players through the stress that they don't want to be put through, because most of the
Hmm.
time they're not successful. It's an interesting thought. I don't think you'll ever see a coach do something different, but it's an interesting thought because of the mental wear down that it does.
Yeah, I mean, what does that do emotionally for this team, especially again these kids who were trying to get, some intel on how they're playing. I mean, I guess, if you want to see them be dejected, this is a good chance to do it, but
Right.
I don't know. I'm just having a trouble with seeing the point in pulling the goalie when you're down two.
It's a fair thought. It's a good thought to have. I mean, it's a different thought.
And the thing about this game too is that, again, much like the last game against the Leafs, they started out okay. I mean, they held the Leafs to no shots on goal during two power plays, which
Hmm.
was really, a strong showing. They had plenty of shots on goal. Just, I think Campbell had a really good game for the Leafs.
He
And
did.
like we talked about yesterday, that he's been playing a lot better recently. But I mean, obviously, the pivotal moment in this game was Wayne Simmons just absolutely destroying Keith Yandel on the Jason Spezza goal.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even a blown tire. It was like the whole bottom fell out of the car. Like, it was just, I don't know what to say. I do know what to say. It looked like me skating the few times I've played defense trying to cover anybody. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's everything you want to, I got texts on tweets on that play. Like it's just some of this play that we're seeing is not NHL level play, and that's where fans really have a right to be mad at this organization because it's one thing saying, "Okay, look, we're just kind of running out the string," but when you're a team that's not trying to tank and you're just embarrassing yourselves in games, that's when you feel for the fans. You do.
Yeah, I think that that's a big difference between a team like this and maybe some other teams. You look at maybe Detroit. I would say more the
Hmm.
last year than this year, but they're a team that obviously had a plan in place and everybody knew they were going to lose a whole bunch of games.
Right.
And but they were building towards something. This is just like an absolute like, the bottom fell out of this team. And so when things like that happen that are emblematic of what was wrong with the team this season, I think that entire play was everything, not everything, but a lot of things wrong with the team this season where you had Yandel just getting, completely destroyed on a play. You had a quick pass across in the slot, burning them on the goal itself. You had them being slow to get to defensive positioning. I mean, that's a ton of what the Flyers have been doing wrong this season. And just to see it in that fashion, I think was a little disheartening.
Yeah, I mean, Martin Jones had a really good first period. Like he was
Hmm.
holding him into it. He was mad when that second goal went in because he knows it's game over at that point, and you know he's probably thinking like, for who, for what. That's an old Ricky Waters thing with the Eagles. Eagles fans would like that, but it's just you feel for the goalies because the goalies know if they don't play a perfect game, chances are they're not winning, and they're the ones that suffer the most mentally, honestly, out there. They do because no matter what, they're facing the tough shots. No matter what, they're doing all they can, and there's really nothing they can do short of a shutout.
Yeah, and especially when it's not their fault, they're not going
Yeah.
to get benched. And so they can't
No,
even take a mental break out of this game.
no,
They're
it's just,
they're just kind of stuck.
and we know, look, they're pros. They get paid, excuse me, they get paid a lot of money, but they're humans. Like, again, this season's going to be hard to turn the page. It is. Guys that are on this team next year are still going
Hmm.
to be answering questions about this season next year. They will.
And probably the year after, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, when it rains, it pours. Sometimes Kevin Connaughton was injured in this game, and it's a lower body injury. We don't have details as of recording, but it's apparently such that he'll probably miss, I would say the rest of the season, but
It
at
may
least a
be.
few games.
Yeah, at least a few games, so they'll have to call up somebody and here we go again. We could go through the carousel of who should be called up. You had a good idea though. You were thinking Wyatt Wiley because
Yeah.
why not give him a reward because like we've talked about all year, he's a guy that's made a lot of good jumps in his play, and really at the beginning of the year I had zero expectations for him, and I feel like he's had a nice season, so it would be a nice reward for him.
I think so. And, he scored last night for the Phantoms in their overtime loss to Providence. It was his
Yep.
fifth goal of the season. So, and he's been a much more active presence in their lineup. We've been talking about him for the past several weeks in our Phantoms wrap up that we do on Tuesdays on the show. And I think that, why not? Why not at this point?
Well, I think soon this will become the Locked On Royals podcast, and we will we're going to start talking about successful teams again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we do have 5 games left in the Flyers season. Very possible they could lose it out. That would be an 11-game losing streak. So that would be 3 10 or more losing
That's hard to
streaks
do.
in the
Just think about
season.
that.
Yeah.
That is really hard to do.
Well, right now we're at 6, and looking at the remaining games, I could maybe say the Flyers have a chance against, I don't know, Chicago, perhaps. The Habs, they have a shot, but the Habs like have been showing up recently, and
They
they'll be at
have.
home.
It'll
I
depend if Carey
yeah,
Price is in there or not, and how he's looking after.
yeah,
Like that'll be like his fifth start, maybe something like that.
yeah. So lots of questions going into this off season, and hoping we can at least get a couple more answers in the next 5 games. And we'll be answering your questions coming up next. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh cuts back on time spent in the kitchen with meals ready in about 30 minutes or less. Plus, they've got quick and easy meals, including 20-minute recipes, low prep, and easy cleanup options, and provide an even faster route to putting food on the table. HelloFresh offers 50 menu and market items to choose from every week, including veggie, fit and wholesome, family friendly, and gourmet options, providing plenty of variety. I love using HelloFresh because you always get something that tastes incredible and is just the right amount of food for 2 people, or I've got a meal for myself and leftovers for the next day. Go to HelloFresh.com/LockedOn16. Use the code LockedOn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. That's HelloFresh.com/LockedOn16 and the code LockedOn16. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. It's nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Russ, we are diving into ye old Locked On Flyers mailbag, and we've got some good ones today. There's one which we're going to get to first, since we just missed it in last week's mailbag episode in terms of getting the question in on time. So we want to make sure we get to it. And this comes from @MartinML89. Do you think that Fletcher will have interest in a Besser or Miller move for a Provorov or Sanheim, considering the Canucks need defensive help?
Well, I don't think. Excuse me. I don't think the Canucks will move JT Miller.
I
I
don't
think that
either.
was discussion very early in the season when Rutherford took over, and that was a while ago. They've moved off of that. The Flyers can't afford Brock Besser, even if they get rid of Provorov, because he's going to be an RFA, and he's going to be an RFA that's going to make around $7 million or more. That gets them back into that area where it's like, what are you doing? Like, I get that he might be a younger player. He has had some injury problems. He's definitely a goal scorer. I wouldn't do it. I think that's a minefield.
Yeah, I think so too. And you just kind of look at it, and your point about what his potential salary would be is a good one, because to me, Besser at, a 7 million-ish cap hit is not worth more to me than Provy or Sanheim at their current cap hits.
Right. And that's what you have to look at.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's what the situation is with the Canucks. Now, like we were talking about last week, would I consider trading Provorov or Sanheim if the situation was better on the other end with the trade partner? Absolutely. It's not like I'm not willing to trade those guys. I just think the value of what you'd be getting in return from the Canucks doesn't align with moving either Provy or Sanheim. All right, the next question, aside from Johnny Gaudreau, are there any obvious free agency targets for the Flyers?
Well, again, they can't afford Johnny Gaudreau. He's going to make $10 million
Right.
or
That's why we're not.
thereabouts.
That's why the question is aside from Johnny
I know.
Gaudreau.
But I just have to answer it, though,
No,
because
it's true. It's
other
true.
fans are thinking it. Even Nazem Kadri, who they may go after, is going to cost like $7.5, $8 million. Like, I think they are interested in him to answer the question, and I think it's lunacy to sign him to answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Now, I have some like potential targets, but I just don't think they would necessarily consider signing with the Flyers, right? And I think that the Rangers have some interesting guys going into free agency, like Cop,
Hmm.
And maybe even Ryan Strome would be an interesting target. And
Even Ryan Strome, and he's done really well with the Rangers. I think Panarin is a part of that, but he's performed well on the
yeah,
power play. You're talking 6.5
I
million. I
know.
I don't think he's worth that. I
Yeah,
don't.
and that's the thing is like I think, for most of the guys that would be bigger impact players for the Flyers, I don't think the Flyers can afford that this year.
Right.
I just don't think so. Now, are there some potential like fourth line-ish guys that I might consider at the tail end that we could target as opposed to just waiting for leftovers? Maybe. If Evan Rodriguez looks like he's healthy, he's a good fourth line option. I think that might be out there.
Yeah, Rodriguez is good. He is
Yeah,
going to be looking for a raise. The biggest,
but not a
the
huge raise.
not
That's
a
I think
huge
it would be
raise, but
worth it.
yeah, I mean, I think he might be worth it. Cop would be getting a big raise too, and
Mhm.
I think he'll probably see how the Rangers do and go from there. But the Flyers have to be careful because really anybody they get on the market is going to cost them more than what it would have replaced in like a trade, and so you can't really go full on shopping this offseason. They might go get one big player, but they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. All right, next question. What is one thing the Flyers could do that would make you confident they were heading in the right direction?
The one thing they could do, it's a good question because I think there's a lot of things. I would say they would have to get the right coach. That's the first thing. And if I feel like they have the right coach, that would give me, about 30% confidence back. So I think that's probably the first step in the right direction is getting the right coach and seeing if that coach could have an impact on the AHL level too. Because if not, as far as who he might want to bring in, to coach down there, that's the biggest thing. So that would be probably the best thing they can do to show me something. And they're gonna do it, but will they do somebody who I think is the right guy moving forward? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, before making any moves, if Chuck Fletcher or Dave Scott or whoever gets up and says, we're taking an integrated approach to this off season where everything will be done in concert with everything else we're doing, including our coaching, hiring, search, and all of that, I think that would be a good sign. Obviously, we would need some evidence that they were actually doing it in their first couple of moves, but I think speaking to it would be a good sign, and I think that you're right, like the coaching hire is going to be huge.
It's massive because there's almost nothing else they should do until they get this coach.
Yeah, and I think who that coach is and what their approach is, like even if it's an old school coach, but they say things like I'm wanting to head in a different direction than maybe I have in the past because this team warrants that
Hmm.
strategically, like as long as they're saying the right things and they're not kind of falling back on what they've done in the past. Necessarily, I think going kind of old school. Again, this is just me assuming they're going to hire Torts and make me angry,
No,
but
I get it, but let's say they even bring in Jim Montgomery, right? Jim Montgomery is a
right.
good coach. He had some issues. He knows how to coach. I know him from college days, and then his early coaching here in the NHL. But he's going to have to be okay with certain things the way they are on the roster because there's not going to be anything you can do about it, and that could
Yep.
push some coaches away. Like, hey, um, we're not really going to be able to play the way I want to play with this roster the way it is, and I know you don't have much flexibility, so that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I agree with you there. All right. Would you re-sign Martin Jones to another 1 year deal for next season?
No, because I need to save that money. Sandstrom's going to be my backup, and I've got to put that money elsewhere. Martin Jones, he did okay. He was going to be 3 goals a game every game. Sandstrom may be the same, but he'll do it for
Hmm.
less.
Do you think Martin Jones would take less money for next year?
I think he might, but again, I'm advancing the ball if I use Sandstrom. I'm just putting a Band-Aid on it if I get Jones.
All right. That's you heard it here first on Russ's goaltending decisions there. Yeah, I think if he took significantly less money, I might do it. But I also think Sandstrom needs to be able to compete as well. So
Right.
that there's kind of a conflict there. All right, we have more questions coming up next, but first we are going to hear about our friends at Built Bar.
We've been talking about Built Bar for a long time on this show, and by now you know how much we love them. But Built has more than protein bars. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors: yummy, cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. All Built Bars, including those puffs, are covered in 100% real chocolate. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. They have so many delicious flavors like mint brownie, raspberry, and cherry barcia. New for this month, caramel almond delight. New flavors coming out all the time at Built Bar. They're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first and then figure out how to make it healthy. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com.
All right, we've got some more questions coming up right now. And, looking forward to the off season, the first one is are there are there any players on this Flyers team that are untouchable in terms of trading them? I mean, obviously there's a couple of guys with no trade or no move, but assuming everybody is available to trade, is there anybody that you wouldn't?
I mean, Carter Hart would be the only one I wouldn't. Other than that, I'm open to listening on everybody, and I'm open to going back to said players with no moves and other things to see if they're willing to go. Uh, you're only going to get better if you look at everything. You can't decide that players are untouchable when you're a bad team. Like that to me, if you want to keep the goalie, you can make an argument, hey, he's a young goalie, he'll be around for the next time we're good, and that makes sense to me, and so that's why I include him.
Yeah, I think the only other guy that I would consider putting on that list, and again, I'm not 100% there with it for the reasons that you just talked about, but it's Joel Farabee.
Hmm.
I think that he is the one kind of younger forward that I'm very invested and want to see how far his career goes with the Flyers. I would hate to see him go somewhere else and be successful.
No, I would too. I mean, I really did love him in the draft. I like him as a guy, but if for some reason he's in like a multiplayer deal, I have to consider it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would consider it, but I think he's the closest of anybody on the
Yes,
team
I'm
right
with you on
now
that.
that I might add to that list. But yeah, right now it's just Carter Hart. All right. Because as we know, the Flyers are not in the playoffs, who would you bandwagon in the playoffs?
I Florida Panthers. I mean, I was bandwagoning the Florida Panthers before the Giroux trade. Now, because of the Giroux trade, that makes it even better. They're definitely the team. They're 10-0 in their last 10. They're everything the Flyers aren't. They're 4 goals a game team. They're exciting to watch. I've been watching a lot of bad games this year. If I could switch off the Flyers and trade that for the Panthers, that's an upgrade for my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, think ultimately the Panthers are one of the most fun teams in the NHL to watch. I think that they just provide so much entertainment. They've been able to come back in a lot of games recently from being down. They had a 10-game winning streak, which is, something that Flyers fans are not familiar with in any way, shape, or form.
Losing streak, yes.
Yes, losing, yes, not winning. I think I'm also interested in the Avalanche and the Flames. I think are my two Western teams that I'm most interested in. Ultimately, I think I just want the Stanley Cup final to be competitive and fun, and
Yeah.
however we get there is fine by me. I would hate to see the New York Rangers get into the Stanley Cup finals just because I'm bitter.
Okay.
But I think that I don't know. I might be interested to see what they can do in a playoff situation, for science. But I don't necessarily want them to win. Whereas a team like Florida, like I'm excited to see them play and would want them to win.
I mean, I can tell you because I've covered Stanley Cup at MSG is a great atmosphere.
It
But
really is. I have been to many playoff games at MSG.
yeah, as far as the West though, I'll still stick with the Minnesota Wild like I did preseason. Love Kaprizov. There's a lot of guys I like. Zuccarello's always fun to watch. Fleury is a guy who I've had many conversations with and have all the respect for, and he's fun. So it'd be easy for me.
Yeah, that's not a bad choice there as well. All right, next question. Do the Flyers have enough goaltenders in their system, or should they draft more this year?
They don't have enough goalies. It's become evident this year, as a matter of fact. And that even if you bring back Pat Nagel, they don't have enough goalies. You got to remember, you never know when you're going to be in another situation where it's a pandemic, and all of a sudden you have to have 3 goalies on a taxi squad again. I'm not willing to say that that's never going to happen again. So based on that, based on the goalies they have, I would try and hold on to every goalie they have right now, and I would draft at least one in this draft and one in the next draft, because you never know who's going down with an injury. You never know, like Fedotov, if he could even come over, because based on what's going on in Russia, he just may not be able to get here. So how many years will that take? For things like that, I have to look at it, and look, you don't want to bring up like a junior caliber goalie into the NHL, but if you remember, on an emergency basis, the Vegas Golden Knights did that with Dylan Ferguson. He came up for a couple of games because they had nobody else.
Yeah, and I think for the Flyers, they have a couple of guys that are just question marks in terms of, are they coming over to North America from,
Right.
Eastern Europe. So I think that's a big part of the problem, is that, they've drafted guys who are now question marks. And so is Ivan Fedotov even going to consider coming over to North America at this point? And can he? We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know. He's having a
And
good. He's one of their best goalies, so he's going to get
right.
offered millions in a paper bag too. Like he's gonna.
Exactly. So I think that's where the problem is. I don't think they've necessarily strategically done anything wrong to get to this point.
No, but they just don't have enough.
Exactly.
It's just a fact.
Exactly. And, for me, I think the Flyers should ultimately even, pick somebody slightly earlier in the draft at goaltender than maybe they would have otherwise, like third, fourth round.
I mean, I can tell you a third rounder who I've interviewed, Ty Brennan, plays for Prince George. That's where McLennan is also, right?
Yep.
So they're teammates. So you could get the inside dope from one of your prospects there. But he's the number 1 ranked North American goalie. He's young. He's just sort of coming into his own. He's not quite there yet, but he's got the mentality and he's got the frame, and so that's the kind of guy. Yeah, if you can get him in the third round, I would do it.
Exactly. All right, last question. Do you think overall this upcoming free agency season will be competitive and interesting relative to recent years?
Well, competitive as far as for what the Flyers do, or just in general?
In general.
In general, I think it will be. The cap's going up $1 million, so everybody could at least shop for one more player. When they do things, I think there's some big names that'll be out there. Look, Fleury will be out there as an example if he still wants to play. We might find that, like you said, maybe Andrew Kopp goes out there. We will see Riley Smith out there from Vegas because I don't think they'll have the money to reel him back in. So there's going to be some good players out there, and I do think it'll be active because I also think that Seattle will get involved because they have money. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
they'll have cap space.
and they
Yeah.
have cap space. So I think, they'll start making a few moves to try and get out of the gutter and the bottom of the league. And Matty Beniers is already heading them in that direction, but they need more help. So yeah, I think it'll be very active and competitive.
I think so too, but to your earlier question about it, I don't think the Flyers are going to be a huge part of it,
No,
but I do think it'll be a fun free agency period coming up this summer.
I mean, it could be really boring for the Flyers if they decide they don't want someone like Nazem Kadri and are going to be cap mindful. They may just re-sign some of the guys they have, like Sealer and Connaughton, and maybe get a bottom six kind of guy and call it a day. Like they just, especially if they know Ryan Ellis is coming back, they may just do something like that. We don't know.
We don't. Hopefully, we'll find out sooner rather than later what their strategy is. But that'll do it for the mailbag for today. Wrapping up with a Flyers fun thing. Lou Nolan apparently plays the kazoo, according to the Flyers TikTok account, and so they put out a cute little video.
But you don't have to take
showing him.
lessons. You don't have to take kazoo
It's
lessons.
true. It's true.
Like I took clarinet lessons, and that is not easy. Like with the high octaves and everything, kazoo, you could pretty much fake it.
I know. My perspective is all skewed because my father plays 7 instruments, probably
Yeah,
more than
that's
7
crazy.
actually,
That's crazy.
including the clarinet. So I am constantly in
Did you
awe
say
of
that to make me feel inferior because I could only play
Yeah,
one
well,
of the 7? Yeah,
honestly,
you kind of did.
everybody, I think, would feel inferior next to my dad and his musicianship. But
There you go.
that being said, I did enjoy the little video of Lou Nolan playing the kazoo. All right, that'll do it for today's show. We will be back again tomorrow. The Flyers will be facing the Habs. We will talk about that. And we'll do our Thursday prospect profile. This time, Kevin Korchinski of the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you, so send us in your mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers, or you can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
You made us your first listen today. Now make your next listen Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Hosts Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day.